you would have heard about this flight that came into the island of Jamaica, USC GmbH, and it had, I believe, over 250 passengers, and they were refused entry into the island. There must be some strong reason why that would have happened. As we can tell you, the Ministry of National Security basically have now clarified immigration arrangements for the over 250 passengers who arrived in Jamaica on flight USC GmbH last Thursday. Despite legally arriving and certain approvals, passengers were refused entry due to security concerns. This morning, we're joined by the chairman of the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, Lieutenant Colonel Oscar Darby, who is our guest at this time. Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel. How are you today?
Good morning, Richard B. I'm well, and good morning to your listeners across the world.
Thank you so much for joining us at this time in the big story. Colonel, what specific security concerns would have prompted the refusal of entry for these passengers?
Well, first of all, let me clarify the number.
Yes.
There were 253 persons on board. Not all were passengers. That's passengers and the crew.
Okay.
And for an aircraft like that, it is a large crew. So it's not 253 passengers, but passengers and the crew.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The approvals for the flight were provided on the basis of the manifest, the passenger manifest that we got. When the aircraft arrived in Jamaica, there were 2 passengers that were not on the manifest. And this caused a more detailed security, or I should say, enhanced security check. And the issue is not with the nationals from India who came. The issue is that there were 2 non-Indian nationals that were not on the manifest, and therefore they were not expected to be on the
flight.
People are complaining that all of these persons have been dumped in Jamaica and they're all over Kingston. That's not the case. The matter is that the nationals that we were expecting and were listed on the manifest had hotel reservations made. They were checked into their hotels and they are staying at the hotels, and like any other visitor to Jamaica, they have the right to go about seeing the sights in Jamaica and enjoying themselves in Jamaica.
Until it's time for them to leave.
It is the 2 non-nationals that were here under a more supervised stay, if you may call it that. And the departure of the flight was delayed yesterday because the crew timed out. The flight should have departed already, but they are taking care of some logistics issues at the airport before it departs. And those logistics have to do with the flight planning all the way to the point from which it came, which is Dubai, getting all the clearances and flight plan coming back, giving the go-ahead. So this time what we did not do is to awake the crew at 4 o'clock in the morning as they did yesterday. And so they ran out of duty time because of the delay and could not have a 5 or 6 hour delay and then depart on a 14-hour flight. This would have made it unsafe for them to be flying such long hours. There are duty time limitations for pilots, as you would well imagine.
Yes. So this flight would have had persons who would have intended to have stayed in Jamaica longer, but now have to...
I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you very well.
Let me ask the question again. Would this flight have persons on it who would have intended to have stayed in Jamaica for a much longer period of time?
No, the flight was charter flights, as you know. They will deliver their passengers and they will go. And they will come back for their passengers when the passengers are due to go.
Yes.
Now, when you bring persons into a country without the proper landing permit, they are meant to be sent back on the flight. But the flight was not going back immediately because it is coming from a long haul. They were flying for a long time before getting to Jamaica, so they could not turn around. The crew was meant to overnight. So the two passengers who were not on the manifest and were brought in on the flight had to remain here in Jamaica, also at the Rock Hotel, with their movements supervised.
Mm-hmm. So they were not detained. Let's get that clear. Mr. Darby?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, so I was asking, was it a case where they were detained or just simply supervised in terms of their movements?
Supervised.
Okay.
We do things in a pretty humanitarian way here. There are conventions governing how these things are done, mm-hmm. and they were supervised.
Okay.
Let me draw an analogy for you.
Yes.
And I have used it on the programs that I've spoken already. If you are leaving Jamaica to Piarco in Trinidad, or if you are coming back from Piarco to Kingston through St. Martin.
Yes.
When the flight stops in St. Martin, you will find yourself sitting on the ground in the aircraft awaiting departure. What you might not know is that the passengers who disembark in St. Martin, they have to be landed. If they are not landed, meaning they don't have the proper permissions to be there or the documents to be there, then they are put back on the aircraft as the airline is responsible for taking persons into the country that are not meant to be there. Mm-hmm. All of that should have been taken care of by the airline, so they are put back on the airline. This was not possible for this long-haul flight because the airline was not leaving immediately. So the passengers were allowed to stay in the hotels where they have had rooms for them, and their stay there was supervised. So it's not a detention as in we put you behind bars mm-hmm. on the airport jail or anything like that.
Okay, understood.
So
understood.
Make your return answer. Okay. So the airline has a responsibility for them and remain here until the movement was ready.
Okay. While we're at it, Lieutenant Colonel, can you sort of provide greater insight to the listeners into the responsibilities and maybe the oversight of that's carried out by the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority regarding charter flights and so on?
Okay, for some reason I'm not hearing it very clearly, Richard. Your volume seems to have gone down.
Wow. Let me repeat the question. I was asking you if you could sort of provide a little bit more insight to the listeners into the responsibilities and the oversight that the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority actually carries out, especially in relation to charter flights.
Okay, permits for charter flight. Applications are made to the Civil Aviation Authority for a permit to conduct the flight.
Yes.
The Civil Aviation Authority requires them to submit a number of, a range of details, information regarding the flight, mm-hmm. So that the application can be processed. It was determined that they didn't provide all the details that was required. It was sent to us by the operator. Of course, we check with our Ministry of National Security, with PICA, with our parent ministry, to make sure that all the details are covered and we get an approval from these agencies for the flight permit to be given. Mm-hmm. When we gave the permit, all those areas were, or the information that was sent to us allowed for the approval to be given, and we issued the permit. When the flight came here, what we got as the manifest prior to the permit, there were two persons added to that manifest who were unknown to us mm-hmm. When we gave the permit. They were not included on the manifest. Of course, PICA, in seeking to admit these persons, had to determine whether or not they had the right documents to be here, what was their purpose, etc.
Yes.
It caused PICA to make a determination that they would not be landed. So although they are here, they are not landed by PICA. So they have to return with the flight, which should have left yesterday, but was delayed until today.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, all the passengers, including the two persons who created the shift in how the whole thing handled,
Yes.
are at the airport, and the flight will be departing in a matter of a few hours.
Okay.
As I said yesterday, the crew was up for 4 o'clock and ran out of time. We took the precaution this morning of not getting them up at 4 o'clock. When everything is ready to go, the flight will be departing. We are estimating that it will go within a matter of a few hours.
Okay.
And the crew will be awoken. The vehicle is at the hotel awaiting their call to bring the crew to join the aircraft and to get the passengers from the airport onto the aircraft and to depart.
Okay. Is there a way, Lieutenant Colonel, that something like this could have been avoided? And how will you, going forward, prevent similar incidents from happening in the future?
Well, how something like this could be avoided is that the passengers who joined the flight without being on the manifest that was sent to us, they should not have been boarded. And so that would not have created a problem. That's the way to avoid it. We perhaps could make it very clear, and although it was as clear as it could be, that the manifest you send us is the manifest of the passengers that are to come to Jamaica. Why 2 persons were added, I don't know, but we did not land those persons.
Okay.
When we're dealing with short-haul flights, it is easier to put somebody back on a flight and send the person from whence they came. When we're dealing with long-haul flights, it creates a situation like this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an outcry that the aircraft should be released. But that is not how aviation operates globally. You bring an undocumented, well, let me not say undocumented. You bring an authorized passenger, you take the authorized passenger back with you.
Yes, I totally understand what you're saying. Something just crossed my mind. Is the way that these passengers were treated, does it compare in any way with, say, the arrival of like Haitians who come to the island from time to time illegally?
Well, Haitians who come to the island from time to time often arrive by boat.
Yes.
And they turn up on our shores, usually in Portland. I don't know of any frequency of Haitians coming here by aircraft illegally. Mm-hmm. We cannot compare the two things. They are quite a different scenario.
Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Darby, you have given us a lot of information, useful information, and the nation and the world is apprised of the latest on this matter. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to wish you a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome, and the very same to you and your listeners.
All right, much appreciated. A chat there with the chairman of the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Oscar Darby, on that